At the top.
Yes, that's right. Alpesh Patel is here. Alpesh is CEO of Profinium Partners. Good morning, Alpesh.
Good morning.
Narendra Modi knows how to work a crowd.
Yeah, he even knows how to work the US Congress. But you know what makes me really angry about this is about 20 years ago, I was lucky enough to be working in Congress for one of the congressmen who's in that audience, Elliot Engel. And we were working with the government of India at that time to lobby the Clinton State Department and the Clinton White House to have Pakistan declared a terrorist state. They didn't do it. 6 years later, it was 9/11, where, in Pakistan, the architect of 9/11 was found housed, Osama bin Laden, a few years ago. In this speech, the Indian Prime Minister talks about regional incubation of terrorism. He's referring to Pakistan. I just hope the US Congress takes far more heed today than they did 20 years ago of the government of India, of congressmen, of some good congressmen who were telling them then the warning signs. And this is partly the problem with the US Congress, is that, and the State Department, and we're talking about Clinton White House as well, they will turn a blind eye to what's going on with their allies, regardless of terror, regardless of human rights, when it comes to trade or it comes to narrow self-interest. And in the end, they end up harming themselves. So I hope they take more notice of the Indian Prime Minister than they did of the government of India 20-odd years ago.
Just to say, there's a difference, isn't there, between calling a country or declaring it a terrorist state and recognising what's going on within a country.
What it would have meant, had they declared it a terrorist state, it would have meant they wouldn't have been shipping armaments to Pakistan, and funding to Pakistan, which then finds its way into Afghanistan, a country which they then went to war against 6 odd years later. And now all the signs point to that harbouring of terrorism. And it was the speech of the Prime Minister of India, which was exactly that point, that it's incubating. And had it not got all that funding from the US, all that capital into defence and armaments and so on, it would have been a lot easier for America to have fought the war on terror.
There are 180 million Pakistanis saying to you that this all stems from what happened with the Russian invasion of Afghanistan. Without Pakistan, it's arguable that the Soviets would never have been defeated in Afghanistan, which could have been the beginning of the end of the Cold War. We're going to have to leave it there. But, you know, that's going to be one defence that Pakistanis are going to be saying to you.
All right.
Yeah, OK, so these three figures are still three. And
staying with US politics.
Yes. Shall we concentrate on Bernie Sanders? Because we talked a lot about Trump and Clinton yesterday. Bernie's meeting Barack Obama at the White House at his own request today.
Yeah. Well, Bernie, whatever you do, don't drop out of that race for a very simple reason. He's got such a huge following that if he were to drop out at this stage and not make it a contested convention, then all those arguments he's been making for the poor, for those downtrodden in American society. We've all seen it. We all see pictures of wealthy America. When you actually go there, you get this culture shock of, wait a minute, 90% of the people, they're not wealthy. They're not like the ones, they're not like Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. So I hope he doesn't get strong-armed. And also, albeit that I'm delighted that the Americans have discovered women can be in politics. You know, welcome. You join the leagues of India and Britain, where we've had heads of state and heads of government who have been women. It's as if America's just, you know, flying the flag for women politicians. They've suddenly discovered that this is possible.
I wouldn't agree with that. There's been many women in very high positions in US politics.
Yes, never leaders. I think it's an interesting point. Liberia, the Philippines, Bangladesh, Pakistan,
Sri Lanka.
You know.
Yeah, Southeast Asia, you know,
Germany.
all the countries tend to be criticised for being gender unequal, as opposed to America, which constitutionally even has equality embedded within its constitution, never had a woman president, closest chance they've got to it. So I hope Bernie doesn't get in the way of that at least, but I don't think he should step out right now, because he is the loudest voice for those who are feeling excluded from American society, and they've never had a woman president. I've just double-checked, Sally. You look unconvinced.
No, they haven't. They haven't. I know they haven't. But I'm just thinking of many women who've been in American politics and have been very influential, like Condoleezza Rice, like Madeleine Albright.
They should have been at the top
women.
sooner, given that other democracies have managed it. Britain managed it in the 70s.
They've got a female central banker. Many economies in the world haven't.
It's not good enough. I wish women higher positions.
Ding, 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 ding.
All right, let's move on.
Round 3. Go for it, Sally.
All right, what's going on with these banks? We know what a big fan you are of investment banks, Alpesh. You're always so vocal in their support on this programme. But what are they doing? They're being rebellious.
Hey, guess what? Bankers are whinging. They're complaining. Big banks, like us, they deposit their money with someone and they expect to get interest. They deposit with central banks, expect to get interest in return. They're not. They're being charged to store it at the central banks because interest rates are so low, and they're complaining about that charge.
But surely they're being charged to store it in a vault as well.
They'd be charged, and this is what some of them are threatening. What they're saying is, we're just going to put it in a vault. They'll probably build their own vaults where they keep their own personal wealth as bankers. What I find interesting about this story is they're complaining that interest rates are so low, they're effectively negative, so instead of getting interest from the central bank, they're being charged. Why are interest rates so low, Mr. Banker? Well, you caused the damn problem to begin with the credit crunch. That's one reason. So they're complaining that they're not making as much money from the credit crunch and the consequence of it as they should have done. But what's also funny is the reason the central banks have these low rates is they want banks to give money to you, to me, to entrepreneurs, for people to buy houses and businesses, and they're not giving the money. So it's their own damn fault they're being charged for it.
All right. Glad we got that one out of the way. Let's move on to Maria Shah, shall we?
She'll be almost 31 years old when she's allowed back on court after this ban. And at the age of 31, you're almost past it in professional sport.
It was the death knell for me in professional sport, I have to say. The thing is, should we make any allowance whatsoever for the fact that she's the icon for women in sport, in tennis and so on, because she's been the most successful female athlete, as you said earlier on.
No, in terms of earnings.
In terms of earnings, sorry, in terms of earnings.
Way.
Should we make any allowance whatsoever for that? Or should we say, you know, by the letter of the law, 2 years, I think 2 years is fairly light as a sentence.
Yeah.
Because on this, as we were saying earlier, it's a strict liability offence. Doesn't matter whether you didn't know what the rules were and you didn't know what you were taking. It's your own fault. 2 years seems very long. I think at 31 she'll be fine. I mean, look at in the men's game, you've had Wimbledon champions over 31.
Yeah, it's quite rare, though, you know, once you go past 30.
Now, look what happens when you are very outspoken about your views. This is the incoming president of the Philippines.
Yeah.
There's a big bounty for his head.
Yeah, because what he said is he's going to put a bounty on the heads of drug lords. Absolutely right thing to say, and so on. So they've reciprocated. Now, I shouldn't smile or smirk, but it just seems hilarious that drug lords have put a bounty on the head of the president to say, well, actually, same back to you. I hope he's successful.
Who's offered the most? The drug lords or the president?
I don't know them personally.
So I mean the bounty.
I suspect the drug lords. I suspect the drug lords, knowing what a huge problem they have. At least he's tackling it. He's a courageous man. I hope he lasts long in the post. And I think it's nice to see him being aggressive on drug lords, because very often it'd be very easy for a politician...
Is he the Bernie Sanders of the Philippines?
It'd be... I don't think he's that left-wing. I don't think he's that left-wing. But normally the politicians keep quiet. They turn a blind eye because they're afraid of this, particularly in Latin America. At least here's one saying, no, I'm going to stand up to you guys. It is a death knell.
I'll tell you what, Alpesh Patel, thank you very much indeed. Duterte is a bit like a RoboCop without the body armour. Wow, he is a radical man. Alpesh, thank you very much indeed, and thank you very much to you for your company.